Only in college football do you get a story like this where a starting quarterback in the SEC and his Venmo history becomes the topic of conversation and spreads like wildfire through social media over the course of a random Monday in the month of August. College football season is around the corner. That's what this story tells me. We obviously have our take on this whole thing as well as it pertains to John Mateer and some Venmo transactions that somewhat undiscreetly allude to him potentially having some sports gambling, maybe or maybe not going on. We'll talk about all that right now, give you our take on it. Before we do that, though, if you're an Oklahoma fan or if you're just a college football sicko, or maybe just maybe if you want to get into the college football gambling scene this upcoming season, we'll have some takes for you there as the season wears on. Bottom line, if you love college football, make sure you subscribe right here to the On3 YouTube channel. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me set the scene for you. It's Monday night, and you start scrolling through the timeline, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, but something starts to percolate. John Mateer Venmo transaction history from November of 2022. Someone, have to believe a rival fan base, went through his Venmo history and saw a couple of different Venmo transactions for things like, one was just titled sports gambling, which is like, yeah, I don't know what's left up to imagination there. Another Venmo transaction said sports gambling, in parentheses, USC, UCLA. The other said ultra sports gambling, and it was something having to do with like the World Cup or what have you. So all that's to say, someone screenshots that, screen records that, puts it out on the socials, and everyone obviously starts going crazy because if you're a college athlete, it is against the rules to sports gamble. Now, November 2022, at that point in time, John Mateer was a redshirt freshman, or a true freshman rather, in his redshirt year at Washington State. So he wasn't playing in these games. You have to imagine that he's potentially gambling on, especially if the USC UCLA title on that transaction in Venmo holds true. But the first thought you have when you see something like that is, all right, this has got to be fake, right? There's no way that this is actually real where someone titled their Venmo transaction sports gambling as a college athlete. But I will say this, at the very least, that looks to be John Mateer's Venmo account. I don't think that much is up for discussion. There's transactions. He's since deleted all those transactions, his entire transaction history, but there's transactions between him and what looks to be Washington State teammates at the time. I think he has a transaction with someone named Benjamin Arbuckle that has since been deleted that I believe was something for like pizza. I'm speculating here, but the bottom line is, with the transaction history being deleted and with news coming out from Sooner Scoop, George Stoya doing the Lord's work over there saying, hey, Oklahoma's aware of this. John Mateer has been adamant he's not sports gambled before. They're handling this. That's John Mateer's Venmo, pretty safe to assume. And then what I just said a second ago, Oklahoma knows about this. And as of us recording this video, John Mateer has said he has not sports gambled. Oklahoma's aware of it. And according to George Stoya, again, Oklahoma is handling this. So a couple of potential scenarios that are, reality here. One, that John Mateer is telling the truth. It's never sports gambled. And if you go look at, any number of different Venmo transactions, whether it's John Mateer and what he had on his Venmo or, your sister's Venmo, like there's people just put funny things in their Venmo history as transactions. All right? I had a buddy who would say something about goat farming whenever he would pay me for a meal that we had or whatever it would end up being. So the bottom line is, just because it says sports gambling doesn't mean without a shadow of a doubt that it is sports gambling. The second thing I would say is maybe he did sports gamble, and let's say that ends up being the case. I don't know how you prove that. I don't know how you, if you're the NCAA, go to town and track this down and do a deep dive and say without a shadow of a doubt, to the point where we have to make you ineligible, John Mateer, this is sports gambling being paid for, a debt being paid, or you're being paid, whatever it ends up being. I don't think you can actually 110% prove that that's the case. So where this leaves me at is, even under the idea of this being a situation where John Mateer did sports bet, the rule of college athletes not being allowed to sports gamble, I have to believe, is put in place so that sports athlete or college athletes don't bet on the sport they're actually playing. You have a situation where you have point shaving, or you have people betting on their own props in a negative way, or whatever it ends up being. Actually, hurting the integrity of a game where the athlete is playing. And that's what I have to believe the rule is in place for. Now, I understand if John Mateer did sports gamble, he broke the rule how it's written. So let's make sure that's clear. I'm not endorsing that. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't have that rule in place. But for what the rule is actually meant to be enforced for, which is college athletes betting on themselves or betting on games they're playing and impacting the integrity of the game, this to me doesn't infringe upon that. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that doesn't really get me all that worked up. And that's kind of where I fall on this whole thing as it, continues to progress. And I'm sure we'll get more clarity on this as it goes forward. Let's not treat this as a bigger deal than what it actually is. 2022, 3 Venmos look like they could be related to sports gambling. This doesn't move me, to be honest with you. It's a funny story. It's a very college football 2025 story that we're talking about someone deep diving a player's Venmo history and then having it spread like wildfire on social media. Let's use common sense when we approach this whole thing. Like if John Mateer had a just CVS receipt of games he was gambling on and we could tie it back to him point shaving at Washington State or even betting on his own props to hit the over on those at Washington State, maybe I'd have some more energy for this, but he's a true freshman. He's 18 years old, betting on games that it looks like he didn't play in if we're going to go ahead and take those Venmo transactions at face value. I don't have a ton of energy for this. And the other thing is, too, if you weren't a rival fan base, I don't think you'd have much energy for this either. Like, this doesn't impact Oklahoma, Texas this year. It doesn't impact Oklahoma, Michigan week 2 this year. John Mateer's not betting on those games or betting on games he played a season ago. Like, I don't think anybody actually, in their heart of hearts, has an issue with John Mateer, the 18-year-old, betting on a 2022 game where USC plays UCLA. If you do have an issue with that, we can talk about this. To me, this is the equivalent of jaywalking. It's against the rules. There's punishment when you break the rules. But if this is actually what we're talking about, we want to talk about John Mateer not being eligible for the 2025 season, that to me is a little bit outside of the realm of common sense, okay? I don't have energy for this. And if you have energy for this, like I said on my social media, I'll say this again, I think you're a square. I think it's lame. I think it's lame to have a bunch of energy for an 18-year-old's Venmo history in a game he wasn't even playing in. So I understand it. It's against the rules. I'm not saying it's okay to break the rules, but I am saying if you want to bring down the death penalty, bring down the guillotine, the chair for jaywalking, which is what the equivalent of this is to me, I don't have much for you. So let me know your thoughts on this. I fully expect there to be no actual smoke that comes from this as it pertains to John Mateer having any repercussions on the 2025 season. Again, I don't know how you prove this from Venmo history. I'm sure the NCAA will get involved at some level based on how much traction this has gotten. They love to get themselves involved in things. At the end of the day, spot the ball. Let's actually play college football, not talk about a guy's Venmo history from 2022. But let me know your thoughts, Oklahoma fans, college football fans in general. Let me know your thoughts on this. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.